So we thought it was about time that we give you a video on our Troopy.
Welcome to our Troopy rundown.
First up, it's a 2019 Toyota Troop Carrier 78 series. We ordered it in June 2019 and it was delivered in November 2019. There's only two different variants. I think it's the Workmate and the GXL. And with the GXL, the reason we ordered it, there was four main reasons, and one of them is you get front and rear diff lockers, cruise control, remote central locking and electric windows. So they were all worth getting. The added bonus of getting cloth seats, carpeted floors and intermittent wipers. They're also a bit of a bonus, but believe it or not, they are extras for this car, or this model. When we ordered the car from Toyota, we got them to supply and fit a few extras onto it, so it was already there when we got the car. So we got an ARB, I think it's called a deluxe bar, and I didn't ask Toyota to do this, but they put on the oversized bar, so like it's oversized tubing, and I think this is about 63 mil, around about mid 60 mil. You know, if you get the smaller one, I think it's about a 40 mil bar, but yeah, I don't know if it makes it stronger. It looks pretty cool. We got the snorkel, so it's a Safari Air Max snorkel, and I think it's like an oversized one. I don't know the technical size, but oversized intake. The car did come with a factory snorkel. Actually, it wasn't a snorkel, it was a raised air intake because it had a join. It was a two-piece snorkel, so there was a join here that made it not waterproof. So we got this one on because it is fully sealed all the way up to here. As well as the bar, we got the brush rails or the scrub bars. I don't actually know what you call them, scrub rails. Either way, brush rails on the front, and they just protect the front end of the car. And I think they've probably done their job because they've got a few scratches down there, so looking after the arches. And they go down into the side steps, which probably also offer a little bit of protection for the sills if you're going over rocks. So I don't know if they're classed as rock sliders or what, but the step's pretty handy for when you're reaching up onto the roof. Also, the arches, they were an addition as well. So they were supplied and put on by Toyota, which just give you a little more sort of coverage from the bigger wheels that we've also put on. BFG KO2 all-terrain tyres. It's the first time I've had a set of BFGs and they seem to be going pretty good on this trip. Wheels are a dynamic black steel rim with the D-shaped holes in them, and they are a -25 offset. So the tyres are a 285, 75, 16. Pretty standard sort of size for these cars. They're like it's a 33-inch tyre, and the reason we went for 33s was because they're a good touring size. The tyres are available in most places, like probably one of the most common tyre sizes, you know, for a sort of bigger four-wheel drive. And they don't mess too much with the fuel economy, whereas if we put 35s on, we're probably going to be sucking down a bit more fuel just because they're a lot bigger, heavier and wider, a lot more friction, so they take a lot more sort of fuel and effort to get them rolling. They're a lot heavier. So 33s, BFGs, that's wheels and tyres. The rear bar, which was I think somebody wants their tennis ball that's on top of the shovel up there. How did you see that? There you go. Okay, rear bar. We only got this put on a few weeks before we left on the trip, and originally weren't going to get one put on just because of the extra cost and the extra weight. But then I realised that, you know, we can carry an extra 40 litres of water on the back and whatnot. So we went ahead, put it on. And anyway, it's called Outback Accessories, and it was probably one of the only bars that I could get in a short amount of time or on the shelf in Perth at the time. So, and so far it's going pretty good. You're gonna have to move, buddy. Righto, so basically we've got a spare wheel carrier on the right hand side and twin jerry can holders on the left hand side, which at the moment is only carrying one jerry can because we've got a bag of firewood in there instead at the moment. Right, two levers down there, gas strut, which stops them from falling closed if you're on a bit of an angle, which I think is a pretty good idea. And they've got these little locks on the inside here as well, which you can just swivel round so that if you know, you can't shut them, they're not going to fall closed if the gas struts fail. Or I've also got attached to the back here a set of max tracks. Actually, there's 3 max tracks in there, and I've just got them ratchet strapped to the wheel. Rubbish bag, which is just XTM from BCF, I think it was. Pretty cheap rubbish bag, but it's perfect, it's doing the job. And I've actually managed to secure it as well, so it stays up level with the top of the wheel, which is really good because quite often they fall right down. Yeah, just a 3 kg gas cylinder tied to the wheel. It's just with a ratchet strap. We've got a shovel, never leave home without the shovel. And then inside here we just got some tarps just tied in there. Just on the back there I've got a hose pipe for filling up water bottles, and this green mat that we're stood on at the moment normally lives in there. I just tie it in there. A couple of little straps just to stop everything from bouncing out. Yeah, otherwise with the bar, I think it's pretty good. One thing I did do with the rear bar actually, because I think Salty Davenport might have the same bar, and I'm sure that when he did a rundown with Ronnie Dole, that he was saying that one of his lights had the bracket had broken on the inside, probably due to vibration from corrugations. So before we left, I got a whole bunch of silicone on the inside and just siliconed it up to try and stop it from rattling around inside its housing and shaking itself to death and breaking the mount. So, and they're still holding up, which is good. I got to give a shout out to my good mate Vince Bowshaw from Coastal Windscreens, who did the window tinting. He's put the darkest tint on all the side windows and round the back, and it keeps all the UV out, it keeps it cool inside, which is awesome. And also did the little black strip across the front there, which also when you're driving it just sort of gives you a nice little sun strip to stop the sun from getting you in the eyes. But yeah, I'm super stoked with the window tint. Good on you, Vinny. We got a suspension upgrade as well. A couple of reasons. One was to get extra lift, so we got a 2-inch lift, which means we can fit the bigger tyres on. They don't scrub full compression or full lock, so that's good. Also for a GVM upgrade, which is the gross vehicle mass. So the factory GVM for this car is 3,300, and with the GVM upgrade it's now 3.95 tonnes or 3,950. So a significant increase, about what, 650 kg, which was handy because when we left on the trip, when we were loaded up with 80 litres of water, watch out buddy, 180 litres of fuel, the dog, Jem, me, food, clothes, I think we were weighing in a fraction over 3.5 tonnes. So the GVM upgrade was necessary just to keep everything legal, safe and above board. So it's PEDAs, I'm pretty sure it's called foam cell shocks or foam cell suspension. Coils in the front and leafs in the back. Yeah, seems to be pretty good. And it's funny because the foam cell, I think you can actually hear that it's foam, or you can hear the shockies sound of air displacing or foam or whatever it is inside, but you can hear them compressing. I don't know if that's cool or not, but yeah, you can hear it, and it's a sign that they're obviously doing their job. Also, just with the GVM upgrade and the suspension, I was just going to point out that for the leaf springs in the rear, they are a 400 kg constant load. When we first got it done and the car was empty, like, there was a massive clearance here. It looked a little bit sort of extreme, if you like, but now that we've got all our gear in there, it's sunk down a little bit, and like the leaves haven't straightened out, but it's just compressed it enough to deal with that constant load of 400 kgs. And the 400's definitely fine, it rides fine on this trip when we're fully loaded. So 400 kg leaves in the back. So up front we've got a set of 9-inch LED spotties. They were just cheap, 150 bucks on eBay, and I've had a couple of sets of these cheapies and they seem to work great. I mean, actually that one's filled up with water from one of the water crossings, but it still works. They light up, and at the moment I've never seen like a set of $1,000 lights, but like, it's hard to imagine that they're worth, or it's worth spending 10 times the amount on those lights when these work so good. But they look like they're on their way out, so maybe like $1,000 set of lights, you'll have them for 5-10 years, I don't know, whereas these have only been on for 18 months and they're discolouring. The bracket is rusting, and that one's filled up with water, so I guess actually that's what you get for $100. But to be honest, I'll probably just go and buy another set of $100 lights rather than spending $1,000 on a set of Steadies or Light Force or the alike. We've got a carbon winch, 12,000 pound. We've only used it a couple of times. Once to pull someone else out who nearly rolled their car in one of the state forests near Perth. And also we got stuck in a pretty big bog hole at Murchison House Station, so we needed to winch out there. The reason we got the carbon winch actually was because I think it was significantly lighter than an alternative winch. I think it was like by about 7 or 8 kilos. At least that's what they told me anyway. So, and price, I mean, you're looking at about $1,000 price. In that price range for $1,000, there's a number of winches you can get. This was the lightest, so that's why we got it. The only problem I found with this, actually, not a problem, but because I fitted the winch myself, you have to take the entire front bar off to be able to get the winch up and underneath, because part of the structure of the steel bar, like there's a bar that goes across underneath, which means you can't just crawl underneath and push the winch up and then bolt it from the front, which is what I did on our previous four-wheel drive. So this one I had to get an engine hoist and support the bar, unbolt it, take it off, mount the winch into the bar and then put everything back. So it was a bit of a job, but it's in there now and it works, so it's good. Haven't done any engine mods to this. Yeah, no performance upgrades or anything. I figured, like, I didn't really want to mess with the engine. It works okay as it is. It doesn't put out tons of power, but we don't need heaps of power. We're not towing, so we left all the tuning as per. But what I did do, as soon as we got it, I put a Provent 200 catch can on there, which I fitted that myself. It's pretty straightforward. And I also fitted a secondary fuel filter. It's actually a pre-filter, so that's a 30 micron filter just there. And the factory filter on the other side is a 5 micron. So that was pretty easy to do as well, just a couple of hoses across the top there. There's a breather line just here for the winch, and what I wish I had done before this trip was put some breathers for the diffs, but I don't have those. But at some point I'll put them on and they'll probably be tucked in there. I pretty much fitted all the 12 volt myself, and it's pretty basic for a couple of reasons. Basic is good if anything goes wrong. The least complicated, the better, in my opinion, because if something breaks when you're out somewhere like here, you want it to be easy to diagnose and easy to fix, if it's possible to fix it when you're out here. So that's the first reason. The second reason is cost, because when you put all these fancy bits and pieces on, they cost a fair bit of money. And as everyone who's got a Land Cruiser or any four-wheel drive knows, it's just endless what you can spend on these things. So I'll run you through the setup, and it is basic. So I've got a 100 amp hour lead acid battery there. So really 100 amp hour, that only gives me 50 amp hours of usable capacity. If I run it down to any less than that, I start to deteriorate the condition of the battery and it won't last as long. So I try to look after it, keep an eye on all the levels, and I don't run it down too low. So I don't think it really ever goes below 12.3 volts. That's when it's got the load on it as well. That's with the fridge running. That's pretty much all we run on it. It's just the fridge and occasionally some lights. We've got a Red Arc DC charger. It's a 1225, just mounted on the Red Arc bracket on the front here. And that basically puts the charger in the front grille just by the radiator, which gives it a nice cool flow of air over it when you're moving, keeping it cool. On the roof of the car, I've got a one of those flexible solar panels. It's like 2.5 mil thick, and I've just glued it down with some adhesive, and I've left about a 4 mil gap between the roof and the panel, just so we get a bit of airflow to help the heat dissipate. That runs down, I'll show you that later on actually when we get up to the roof, but basically that comes down and wires straight into the Red Arc charger, and that charges the second battery when we are stationary or the engine's not running. I did put this little Anderson plug in here as well, a bit of a splitter, and that's just paralleled with that solar panel on the roof, because I also got a 200 watt solar blanket So if the solar panel on the roof fails, I can just hook up the solar blanket to there, and that'll also charge up the dual battery. I'll show you what I've got in the back of the car. So like I said, it's a very basic setup. The dual battery, basically all it runs is this little outlet panel here. So I've got a twin USB there where I can just plug in the fairy lights inside the car. Ta-da! It's got a cigarette lighter output just there, which I occasionally use to charge the drone batteries, and a little voltage display just there, and then just a switch there so you can turn the whole thing off. Pretty basic. I don't have a power meter there, which would be handy to know how many amps is going in, just so I can monitor the condition and the life of the solar panel on the roof, and also just monitor the system. But it was expensive. It was one more thing to try and install, running more wires. I just thought I'd do about it for now. Alrighty, we're on the roof. So this is where I've got the flexible solar panel mounted, and I just had to drill a couple of holes down through the roof to get the cables down.
So the roof's up, the supports for the awning are up, and now we can go inside and we can push the bed platform up, and then we can get in.
Hello!
And now we're in. Welcome to our Troopy bedroom. We have two windows here with fly screens. We have the gas struts on each side, which is how the roof pops up itself once you've undone the catches. We've got very grown-up bedding, a couple of lights in here, reading lights, one on each side. So the mattress that came with the roof was really uncomfortable, so we tried a few different options, and what we found best is we have a couple of light inflatable mattresses that we can just blow up by mouth, and then we have a memory foam mattress that we got from Clark Rubber.
Yeah, so the inflatable mattresses they inflate to 66 mil, and the memory foam on the top is 35 or 40 mil.
Yeah.
And the idea of the inflatables are that when we're not sleeping, we let the air out, and that means we can leave the doona and the pillows up there and still close the roof. Whereas if we had like 100 mil piece of foam up there, then we can't close the roof with the doona and the pillows.
So when we first got the car, and before we got the rear bar and the awning, we used to exit the roof
Right,
this
I need to
way.
jump off the back of the car. So we used...
Hi.
Before we put the rear bar on, and the spare wheel was on the door, when the door was shut, you could climb out of there and onto the spare wheel and down. That worked pretty good. But now, I don't know if it's actually because the spare wheel's on the bar or what. I don't know why we don't do that anymore. But
Sometimes we have the awning up as well.
yeah, if the awning's up, because it's 270, which we'll throw it up in a minute and show you. But if the awning's up here, you can't come out of there.
So at night it's really nice because we can have these sides completely zipped up if it's really cold or if it's raining, and we've had a few big storms where we thought we were going to get wet and we didn't.
How was it this morning when we woke up and you said, oh, it's still dark outside?
It was pitch black because we had them zipped right up because it was cold. And then when I unzipped them, I realised it was 8 o'clock and it was broad daylight. So when we're ready to go downstairs, this is what we do. We lift up the hatch and then we go downstairs.
So now we're coming to you from the access hatch, which you can probably just see here, and that's the bed. So we always sleep with our heads at this end, and basically I can't remember the dimensions. I did measure it one time, but I've forgotten what it is now. Probably a little over 2 meters. It's about 2.2, 2.3 from the front end to this back end. So if you were like tall, which we're not, you would be sleeping over this. But because we're quite short, we find that we can pretty much sleep south of where this hatch comes down. So if one person needs to get up, they can lift this hatch up without the other person having to get up. But like I said, if you're like 6 foot or something, you'd probably have to tie yourself into a knot and shimmy down that end, or wake the other person up and both get up. But yeah.
If we want to chill out inside, this is what we have to do. So we just push up this end, and then we push up the platform.
Disco.
So if the weather's not very nice, or there's lots of bugs or whatever, this is what we do. We come in and we chill out. Cooper usually has his bed down there, so he sleeps down there. I'll sit here, Ian will sit there, and yeah, we've got headroom, we've got some lights here.
How many lights have we got in there?
We've got 1, 2, and 1 there. Oh, and we've got the fairy light.
So the fairy lights, $12 on eBay, winner.
And then we can access the fridge, and that's pretty much it. This is where we hide.
Pretty much everything that is in here I've built myself with the help of Gemma and Cooper. Basically, we got a unit on the side here, which was the first thing I did. From memory, I think it's 15 or 17 mil ply, which is, I remember now thinking that it's overkill. I probably could have got away with 12 mil, which would have been a lot lighter. But this thing is solid and it hasn't moved at all on our whole trip. Little compartment there, and we've got, it's where we just keep, we've got the poles for the awning. We've got a couple of chairs in there as well, and there's a pair of shoes up the end. Originally that was the storage for 4 Max Tracks, because I wanted to keep the Max Tracks out of the sun and away from anyone that might pinch them. For this trip we got the Max Tracks tied to the back wheel, and our chairs go in there. And then there's just some magnets that hold these covers on. And just in the side there I've got the air compressor fixed in the side cavity of the car, and it's hardwired off the primary battery. So there's basically just a switch there, you can turn it on and off. Little butane burner as well, which is just quick and easy to grab to make a coffee at the side of the road. I'll show you the drawer. This is our pantry, and basically this goes, well, it's about 1.4 meters long, so it goes all the way in to where the furthest big square compartment is there. It's about 200 mil deep. There's another gas burner there as well, actually, a cast iron burner that goes with the LPG bottle that's on the back there. Oh, I'll tell you about the runners, because they're pretty cool. So they're rated at 227 kilo. Not that we'll ever put that amount of weight on there, but they were the only runners that I could get that would come out this length, and because of the length they just came at 227 kilo rated. But the good thing about them is that they've got lockers on them, so it locks in the open position. You can lock it halfway, and you can also, when you shut it up, it locks shut, so it doesn't just keep sliding open. It's got some nice little spring return latches on it, so that's really good. Also, just on the back here, first aid kit that's just hanging off the handle. And then I've got this little bag here, little Velcro. It's got all the guy ropes in there, and I've somehow just managed to screw that to the back there. It just stays there. Panels as well on like the back door and the side. Took the old ones off. They were like real thin, flimsy, like MDF. So traced them out onto some 6mm marine ply. Carpeted them along with the same carpet that I've done the rest of this in, which is just like a marine carpet from Bunnings. Pretty standard, hard wearing. The only downside to the carpet is when you go to the beach and you get sand in there, it's a pain in the neck trying to vac out the sand. You just can't ever get it all out. So maybe the carpet wasn't the best finish, but it kind of looks neat and tidy. I upgraded the speakers on both sides, so I took out the factory, whatever they were, 6-inch round ones, and put a pair of 6x9s in there. Yeah, and this side here, I threw away the old panel, cut some holes in the steel-work of the door so I could recess these storage areas. And this one here is where Cooper's leads live. And then we've got a couple of packets of wet wipes. Here I've just got I think this is a bag that came with one of the inflatable beds. So I've just screwed it into there, and then we've got like incense sticks. And this was a first aid bag that I got one time from somewhere. And now it's just got, it's got Cooper's poo bags in there. And what else? An axe. one of the original screw holes for the original panelling. I just put a nutset in there, got a bolt, cut the head off, screwed it in, and just got a little wing nut. How good's that? And then actually just what I also did, nutserts. How good are nutserts? So I just drilled a couple of holes here and just sunk a couple of M3 nutserts in there. And then I've got somewhere to tie a bit of string across, and then we got sand pegs up there, hose for the gas burner. We've got some just random cable ties and some clamps for the canvas. Same on this side, nutserts down the side here, M3 screws, and then yeah, just little bags, Colgate bags that I got from the dentist. Every time we go for a, you know, like a clean or whatever, a couple times a year, they give you one of these bags every time. So yeah, we decided to use them for storage for pegs, hooks, washing up. And then we just got the handle for taking the lid off the cooking pot. Moving along. So on top of here we've got a few different covers that open up. So the first one is this one on the side. And originally when I made this, our two chairs went in the side of there. Obviously now we've got the chairs in this part and they come into about here. So about 2/3 of the length, which means in here we've now got, at the moment, we've got a few supplies, and there's a laundry bag, we've got some towels, we've got some just bits and pieces. That gap in there, it goes over the wheel arch. So apart from the wheel arch, it's that deep and it's that long. And I've got these sort of soft shut kitchen hinges, which super smooth. Moving along. Now we've got this little compartment here. So the MaxTrax compartment, or where the chairs are now, comes to here, and then it stops. So it's only the length of the MaxTrax. And then we've just got this little compartment here that's got batteries, torches, few electronic bits and pieces. And that's only that deep because the drawer goes underneath. And then another one over this side. So this one is the full depth, which from memory is about 450. And I've got a toolbox, some jump leads, some sockets, some beach treasure, tyre repair kit, some CRC and a hot glue gun. And the final compartment in here is this one up the front, which originally when I designed and built this storage unit, I made this one to put 2 of these blue 20 litre water containers in there, but 20 litres of water is 20 kilos, so it made it pretty awkward trying to pull 20 litres out of there. And also, like, the frequency that we're going through the water means that we're having to get through here quite often. So that was probably another reason why we ended up getting the rear bar. I'll show you what we've got. There's some container for filming, camera stuff, a bag, harness for Cooper, a bag of fishing gear, camp oven, a little 12 volt electric shower, a container full of screws and just miscellaneous spares, a little computer scanner for the car, a couple of little bits for Cooper, another packet of filming stuff, and we've got another container here that's got a barbecue fire pit, a steel cast iron fire pit, which once it starts to cool down we'll be using this to cook dinner on and have a fire, because some places don't let you have a fire unless you've got a fire pit. So this is the 200 watt solar blanket, which we only picked up at the start of this trip as an addition. 12-inch sub, which you'll see from the other side. This is just a 40 litre Engel. What else we got? Solar screens, which have been amazing at keeping it cool in here through the hot times when the sun's, you know, like beating onto the car. These do a good job of keeping it cool, reflecting the heat away, and also stopping people from looking into the car. This water container here is the one that normally is the second one that normally lives on the rear bar, but because I put firewood outside to keep all the dirt out of there, we've just been putting this one in here, as well as another 2 here. So the ones on the tail, we generally use those for showering, washing, and then these 2 in here, we keep these for drinking water, and that kind of works out okay. And these are just secured to the side via some straps which are attached to some hooks, which basically the holes here for the side paneling, I put nutserts in them, screwed the M5 or M6 loops into them, and now we can tie this stuff back to the side. So 220 litres of water. We got Cooper's dog food is just here. The wheel arch came over here, so it was a real awkward kind of shape and position. I boxed it out, gave us a flat surface to put the water. I think originally I was going to put 3 waters along here, but we needed to put the food somewhere. And then at this end we've got a little bit of storage where we've got a few bits and pieces, some fly nets for the windows, which we just use magnetic strips to put these on when we need them. That was a bit of a last minute deal as well. That's why they're a little bit sort of not that good. Well, they work effectively, but they don't look that flash. And then we've just got some recovery gear. There's a snatch, a tow. We've got a pulley for the winch and a couple of these soft shackles which are in there. What else have we got? Oh, there's the jack in there. We've got some spares. We've got a spare fuel filter, air filter. The handheld electronic plug-in winch controller lives just up there. Some map books, some wet wipes, service book for the car, and the shade for the front window. Hat's just stuck on with some Velcro. In the back of the car, there was like things like here, there was a grab handle, which I took it off, and then I just put some screws into the old holes, and really handy for like tying bits of string to, for securing things like the fishing rod or hanging stuff up. And I've done that on this side as well. I also, at the last minute, decided to put these like clamp sort of things, the strips. They're just nut-serted to the steel work, and then some screws, and then you can just move them along to wherever you want them. What else? Yeah, just some bungee cords as well, just to store. We've got a camelback there, a rucksack, some thongs, Jim's roller, some hats. I think that's it in the back. The original tool bag that came with the car, I've got tent pegs in there now, and that just slides underneath there. And I also got the wrench for the wheel nuts and for locking in the front hubs. I just screwed this little P-clip underneath there, and that just slides into there. Always there when you need it. It's so handy. These little phone holders, just put your phone in there, and as you drop it, the 2 clamps on the side clamp your phone. And they were like 20 bucks, and then I've just glued them to the side pillar there, and they just work. We tried sticking them to the window, but in the summer heat in Perth, it just melted the glue and made a mess. Welcome back. So I ran out of time last night to finish filming the this episode on the car. It was about sort of 6 o'clock, and it was getting cold, and we hadn't got a fire going. And we'll start off with behind the seat. What I've built in here is this little storage unit, which I just bolted to the front of the main storage unit in the back. In there, I've just got a little compartment, just, you know, you put whatever in there, but I've got a couple of bits of sun cream, some car air freshener, and some window cleaner. And I've just got a little bit there for the tripod for the camera. We got a little fire extinguisher mounted down the bottom there, which it's not ideal that I'm putting stuff in front of it, but the stuff that's in front of it is very easy to pull out. The inverter is basically, it's a 1000 watt inverter, so it's not that big, but I only ever really seem to use it for charging the laptop, which I'm actually doing right now. The inverter is powered up off of the primary battery, so I took one cable from the primary battery, came to here to the inverter, but I also looped it back out of the inverter down the back to the air compressor. I don't often find that I need to use both of those at the same time. The air compressor doesn't get used too frequently, and when it does, it's normally only for like a few minutes at a time. So I thought, to save time, cable and effort, I'll just loop them off the same circuit. But if I do want to use one or the other, I only use one or the other. So like, I won't use the air compressor if the inverter's running. Yeah, inverter used for charging the laptop mainly, which I'm actually using that now to charge the laptop. And what I've done, I've got my solar blanket just hanging off the side of the car, and I've just got that running back, and I'm using the charge regulator that came with the solar blanket, and I've just got it hooked onto the primary battery. Basically, it means I can charge the laptop without having to run the engine, and I'm not taking any of the current out of the second battery, which I'm using to run the fridge. Sometimes if I need to, I do hook the solar blanket up to the second battery if we're parked in a position kind of like what we are now. We're sort of parked where the solar panel on the roof isn't getting the ideal sort of sun. It's not parked directly into the sun. So if we're going to stay for a couple of days, sometimes I'll just plug that solar input into the second battery, and that just gives that a boost. We got a sub, which is a Rockford Fosgate P2 12-inch sub. The amplifier is just tucked down the side of the fridge there. So center console in the Troopy, the factory setup was pretty average. There was no armrest and the center console wasn't really that great, so I decided to make one. I could have brought one, but the price of them were like upwards of $500 or $600, so I just decided to make one out of the leftover wood and the carpet that I had from building the storage in the back of the car, and to be honest, it worked out pretty well. Now we've got a center console, the armrest is perfect, that opens up, and we've got storage, so I'll just keep the drone in there. And incorporated in that, we've got this little storage bit at the front here, as you can just see there, so you can put bits and pieces in there. But what I also did, and I did this pretty much the day before we left on this trip, was I made this little plug, if you like. It's a bit of wood, cut a couple of 80mm holes into it and then carpeted it, and that just plugs in there, it just sits in there, and then that way you can put a coffee cup in there. And then bolted to the front of this center console, I just got a couple of bicycle bottle holders and screwed them straight to the front. And with our drinking bottles, they just slot straight in there. Yeah, we've got a two-way radio as well, which is pretty basic. It's nothing flash. I mean, it's a few $100s, but it's a GME TK3100. All the controls are just on the unit there. And I took the ashtray out and mounted the two-way in there. We do have to have the handheld running up, and I've got it hooked over the mirror, but it's not a problem. The radio, so we pulled out the factory one, which was a double DIN radio. Basically I had to swap it over because the existing Toyota one didn't have the auxiliary outputs for the amp and the sub, so I just put this radio in, which is only a cheapie, probably only $100. And then I got this extra little storage compartment underneath because we're now only a single DIN, not a double DIN, and that works out really well for charging drone batteries. So you can just chuck them underneath there. The drone charger is just in the cigarette lighter there, and the lead runs up, and then just plug it into there. Twin USB outlets there, and we've got one USB outlet on the drone charger. I do have a second one of these, and it gives you a readout of the voltage and the current as well. You probably noticed that I haven't got any seat covers in the front here. We did look at it, but by the time we got round to wanting to get some seat covers, you know, like you look at the price of seat covers and they're not cheap, and the money that we would have spent on seat covers would have taken away from the money that we are spending money for this lap. So for now, we just got a couple of old towels on the seats. Obviously they're not waterproof, so we're a little bit careful about what we drop on them. One thing I forgot to mention yesterday about the engine, a mod that we have done, is we've fitted a water-cooled alternator. Basically because the factory air-cooled alternators for these engines are notoriously prone to taking on dirt and water when you're going through, you know, like mud and bog holes and water. Because the alternator is mounted so far down at the bottom of the engine, and obviously where they're air cooled, they just got holes and vents in them, and they just fill up with mud, and then eventually they just fail. So therefore we fitted this a water cooled alternator. It's a fully sealed unit, and it's just got a couple of hoses that they tee into the cooling circuit, and now no dirt or mud can get into the alternator, so means that we can go through water and mud with a little bit of confidence, knowing that we're not going to kill the alternator. Right, we're just round at the back of the car, and I thought I'd just give you a bit of a heads up about our little green box set we brought. Basically, getting in and out of the back of the car, the rear step is pretty high, and it's even higher now that we had this new rear bar put on. So you know, we needed some kind of step. We looked at possible steps that go into the hitch receiver, but then, like, you know, you're going to smash your legs on it every time you walk past and stuff, and it's not ideal when you're off-road because they hang out pretty far. But anyway, what we did is we went to Bunnings and got one of these little plastic boxes. We use it as additional pantry, so that also doubles up as a step up into the back of the car. And also it's good because Cooper can use the step as well, so he doesn't have to keep jumping up and down and risk hurting himself. So we've got a table just there, and basically the table just lays upside down on top of here, and then the box sits on top, and then we just got a rope attached to the anchor point there, and it wraps around the green box and ties it back to that side so it doesn't fly around. And finally, the last thing on the outside of the car, which we'll show you now, is the AluCab shadow awning, which is 270-degree awning. So it comes out, gives you a shade on the side of the car, and it wraps around the back of the car, and it gives us shade over the working area at the back where we got the drawer and that sort of stuff. We didn't originally plan to get the shadow awning because it was definitely one of the, if not the most expensive one. But it turns out that it was the only one available in Perth, so we had no choice because we only fitted this a few days before we left on our trip. Jem has given you a mighty fine demonstration of how easy it is to operate. This awning from AluCab is it's freestanding, and it does come with one leg on this this beam here. It only comes with that one leg, and you can buy additional legs for the other two beams. I actually had a couple of telescopic posts kicking around at home, so I've just attached them to those beams without buying the actual AluCab ones, and they work exactly the same and they do the job. So freestanding, unless it's a bit windy, in which case we just drop the legs down, pull the guy ropes out, and just put a few pegs in the ground or weight it down with sand or water, and that just stops it from bouncing around. One thing we have found actually with this awning is if it is super windy, this stretch here, because this span is quite big, this does flap up and down quite a bit. So we just brought some canvas clamps, clamp it onto there, and we just put a rope down to the ground, and it just stops it from moving around. And just up here in the middle there is this steel arm that you just swing it up, and what it does, it just, if any water comes on top of the roof, it just creates a high point, and then all the water can run down off the edge, which is also the bonus of putting the clamp on this here. It just pulls it down a little bit and makes the water run off. When we got the awning, it didn't come with a strap or a clamp or anything to secure the awning back. I think it was meant to, but we didn't get one for whatever reason. I already had this bracket on the back here, so I just drilled a hole in there, fed the string through, tied a few knots, put a washer on the inside so you can't see it, and then there's a bit of string out there with a loop in it, and then this little spring pin, you can just put it out, put the loop under, put the pin through, and that secures it back. And it is reflective on the top, so it like reflects the UV, reflects the heat. Yeah, I think we're pretty happy with it. Fitting it was a bit of a mission, which I've actually got a separate video for that on the way. It's got a separate AluCab bracket that wraps around the sort of side and the back of the roof. And then there's also a separate bracket at the front. So the first thing is our air compressor is mounted in the back behind there, as you saw earlier. And I reckon it would be super handy if I had put a an air cylinder somewhere in the back, so you've got compressed air on a gun readily available when you need it. You can then just have compressed air to blow all the dust out. The other mod, which we haven't done and may do, but it's a costly one, is the rear wheel track. In case you don't know, back in, I think, late 90s, early 2000, when they changed the engine from the old 6-cylinder to the V8, apparently they had to widen the front wheel track to fit the engine in, or to fit, you know, driveline components. And they didn't widen the back width when they did that. So it turns out that the front wheels are overall 95mm wider than the back wheels, and it makes it a bit sort of average when you're driving on sand. You know, the car moves around a little bit. It's possible that in the future we may well get a new diff. There's a number of ways you can fix the problem. Wheel spacers are illegal, and I think that the rims, because we've got neg 25, we can't get a rim deep enough to do that. That'll give us wheel bearing issues down the track anyway, so a rear diff is probably the most likely fix for me. That is our Troopy, complete with the AluCab Hercules pop-top roof. Hope we covered everything. Hope you enjoyed the video, and if you have any questions, post a comment and I will try and answer the questions if I can. And for now, we'll leave it at that.